The grand piano gleamed under the soft spotlight in the middle of Carnegie Hall. Hundreds of people filled the velvet seats, whispering in anticipation. Backstage, world-famous pianist Victor Langley adjusted his cufflinks, waiting for the final rehearsal before his evening performance. He'd played in front of presidents, royalty, and sold-out crowds. But today, something felt different, and he didn't know why. Outside, a group of students from a local music outreach program had just arrived. Among them was 11-year-old Marcus, a blind black boy with oversized headphones hanging around his neck. His cane tapped gently across the marble floor as he walked, his fingers occasionally brushing against walls or chairs. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. When Marcus touched a piano, the world changed. Inside the hall, Victor noticed the group filing into the balcony for a tour. He barely paid them any attention, until the program coordinator approached him backstage. Mr. Langley, one of the kids. He's blind, but he's got this incredible ear. I think you might enjoy hearing him play. Victor raised an eyebrow. You want a kid to touch my Steinway? He's special. Just let him play. Just for fun. Victor hesitated, then smirked. All right, just for fun. Moments later, Marcus was guided gently to the stage. He reached out and found the edge of the bench, running his fingers across the keys. Victor stood to the side, arms crossed, ready to humor the boy for a few minutes. What would you like to play? Victor asked, a touch of amusement in his voice. Marcus tilted his head. I heard you warming up earlier. I can try that. Victor's smirk faded. That was Rachmaninoff. You heard that? Marcus simply nodded and placed his fingers on the keys. And then he played, not like a child stumbling through notes, not like someone trying to imitate. He played with a depth, a power, and a soul that filled the hall and silenced every whisper. Victor Langley didn't move. His heart pounded. His throat tightened. This wasn't just for fun. This was something else entirely. Victor stood frozen as Marcus's fingers moved effortlessly across the piano. Each note flowed with purpose, echoing through the grand hall like a forgotten memory being rediscovered. The boy played not with technical perfection, but with something rarer. Emotion that cut through silence like a knife. The kind of playing that made grown men cry without knowing why. The students in the balcony leaned forward, jaws slack. Even the stagehands had stopped. The hall, which moments ago buzzed with chatter, now held its breath. Victor took a slow step closer, as if drawn in by something magnetic. He watched Marcus closely, his hands, his posture, the way he tilted his head slightly with every chord. It was instinct, not training, feeling, not form. When the last note faded into stillness, Marcus let out a soft breath and smiled. I like that one, he whispered. Victor didn't speak right away. He couldn't. Where did you learn to do that? He finally managed. Marcus shrugged. I just hear things. Then they live in my hands. Victor stared at him. Do you read music? I don't read at all, Marcus said with a small laugh. But I listen. The program coordinator stepped forward, clearly stunned. He taught himself. His grandma says he started tapping on pots when he was 2. She finally saved up enough to buy a used keyboard from a thrift store. Victor glanced down at the Steinway. An $180,000 instrument, and yet somehow it felt humbled by this boy. Would you play another? Victor asked, his voice gentler now. Marcus tilted his head again. Only if you play with me. Victor blinked. He hadn't shared a stage in decades, not even for duets with fellow professionals. But something about Marcus disarmed him, like music itself had taken the shape of a child. He sat beside him. Marcus reached out and touched Victor's arm lightly. You start. I'll follow. Victor placed his hands on the keys, unsure why he felt nervous. He began with a slow, haunting melody of his own, a piece he had written but never played in public. As he played, Marcus followed, not note for note, but emotion for emotion. They weren't performing, they were connecting. And in that moment, Victor Langley realized something terrifying and beautiful. He was not the most gifted pianist in the room. After the final chord faded, Victor removed his hands from the keys, but Marcus kept playing, drifting into a soft improvisation that echoed the piece they just shared. It was delicate, unsure, yet full of curiosity, like a question asked without words. Victor sat in silence, watching this boy explore melodies he had never seen written, never practiced. Marcus wasn't just copying, he was answering, and his answer said everything Victor didn't know he needed to hear. When Marcus finally stopped, he turned his head toward the sound of Victor's breath. "Did I mess it up?" Victor shook his head slowly. "Number U made it better." The program coordinator clapped softly from the wings, but no one else moved. Even the sound engineer, who had been adjusting cables for the evening performance, stood frozen behind the booth. "Does he do this often?" Victor asked, still staring at the boy. The coordinator stepped forward. "Only when he feels safe. He doesn't talk much, but music's his way in. His grandma says when he was 5, he played her heartbeat on a piano bench." Victor let out a short, amazed laugh. He turned to Marcus. "Would you like to stay for my concert tonight?" Marcus smiled shyly. "Only if I can sit close." Victor nodded. "You'll sit right next to me." The coordinator's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying—" "Yes," Victor interrupted. "He's playing with me, tonight." A ripple of disbelief passed through the small crowd that had gathered backstage. Victor didn't care. His gut told him something rare had just happened, something you don't ignore. That evening, the hall filled to capacity. Critics, musicians, celebrities, all unaware of what was about to unfold. Backstage, Victor adjusted his tie and turned to Marcus, who sat quietly in his pressed shirt, headphones now resting around his neck. "You nervous?" Victor asked. Marcus grinned. "I don't know what that feels like." Victor chuckled, a little envious of the boy's calm. As the stage lights rose and the curtains opened, the audience applauded, expecting the usual brilliance. What they got instead was history. Victor introduced his special guest, and murmurs swept through the hall as the blind boy stepped forward with his cane. No one clapped. Not yet. They didn't know, but they were about to. Victor led Marcus gently to the bench, his hand resting protectively on the boy's shoulder. The audience watched in stunned silence. Some squinted, unsure what they were seeing. A blind child on stage? A publicity stunt? A teaching moment? Victor didn't offer explanations. He simply nodded to the conductor, who stood waiting with equal uncertainty. And then, without warning, Marcus placed his hands on the keys. The first notes rang out, soft, steady, and full of warmth. A hush swept across the hall. Victor joined in, weaving harmonies around Marcus's melody. It was the same piece from earlier, but this time something had shifted. Marcus was leading, and Victor was following. The audience didn't realize it at first. They were too caught off guard by the sight. But within minutes, the sound pulled them in. Cell phones were lowered, eyebrows raised. Some leaned forward in disbelief. The music swelled, filled the space, and settled deep into the skin. A woman in the front row began to cry. A man 4 rows back put a hand to his heart. The music was alive, wild and untamed, yet gentle as a lullaby. Marcus played like someone who had never been told there were rules, like someone who'd never learned to be afraid of getting it wrong. By the time they finished, a full minute passed before anyone remembered to clap. Then it came, a wave of thunderous applause that shook the room. People stood. Some yelled. Others just covered their mouths in awe. Victor bowed once, then turned toward Marcus, guiding him up from the bench. Marcus bowed too, shy and unsure, not fully understanding the noise around him. Backstage, chaos erupted. Producers, journalists, musicians. Everyone wanted to know who the boy was, where he came from, how long he'd been trained. Victor said only 4 words. He was born ready. Later that night, while the buzz still echoed through the building, Victor found Marcus sitting alone backstage, his fingers running softly across a small keyboard someone had left behind. "You stole the show, you know," Victor said, sitting beside him. Marcus smiled. "Did they like it?" Victor nodded. "They loved it." Marcus turned his head. "Does that mean I can come back?" Victor looked at him, and for the first time in years, his voice caught in his throat. "You can do anything you want." The next morning, Marcus woke up in the small apartment he shared with his grandmother. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the only piano he had was the same battered keyboard with two missing keys. But something had changed overnight. His name was everywhere. Local news, music blogs, social media clips from the concert had already gone viral, with millions of views and comments flooding in. "Blind Boy Stuns Carnegie Hall. A gift from God," read the headlines. Grandma Laverne held her old phone up to Marcus's ear so he could hear the interviews, the applause, the disbelief in people's voices. He smiled but stayed quiet. She placed her hand over his. "Baby, you did something last night no one can ever take from you." Marcus nodded. It felt real. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Grandma opened it to find a suited man holding a thick envelope. "I'm with the Langley Foundation," he said kindly. "Mr. Langley asked me to deliver this personally." Inside was an official invitation, a full scholarship to one of the top music academies in the country. Tuition, housing, a new piano, and private lessons, all covered. Marcus ran his fingers over the embossed letters. He couldn't see them, but he felt the weight. Still, he looked unsure. "Do I have to leave here?" The man kneeled down. "Only if you want to. But Mr. Langley believes you're ready for something bigger." Marcus turned to his grandma, who gave a gentle nod. "The world's been waiting on you, baby. Time to show it what you've got." A week later, Victor Langley stood at the gates of the academy, waiting as a black car pulled up. Marcus stepped out, holding his cane in one hand, a small bag in the other. Victor smiled. "Welcome home, Marcus." That first day, he was quiet in class. He didn't know how to read the theory books. He couldn't read sheet music. But when he touched the piano, every room fell silent. Instructors stopped teaching and started listening. Other students began seeking him out, not out of pity, but awe. He wasn't the best because he knew more. He was the best because he felt more. Victor began working with Marcus privately, introducing him to composers, textures, harmonies that stretched far beyond the pages of traditional music. And Marcus, in turn, began to change Victor. The master was becoming the student, and he loved it. Months passed, and Marcus's name began surfacing in places once reserved for legends. He wasn't just the blind boy from the concert anymore. He was being called a prodigy, a pioneer, even a prophet of sound. Yet through all the noise, he stayed the same, quiet, curious, and most at peace when his fingers were on the keys. Victor watched from the sidelines with growing pride. At 64, he had spent a lifetime perfecting control, precision, and performance. But Marcus taught him something he never learned at conservatory: to let go. One evening, as snow fell outside the academy windows, Marcus and Victor sat side by side at a grand piano. No audience, no cameras, just them. "I wrote something," Marcus said, tilting his head. Victor smiled. "Can I hear it?" Marcus nodded and began to play. It started with a simple melody, soft, like footsteps in fresh snow. Then it grew, layered with unexpected turns, strange yet beautiful harmonies that rose and fell like waves. Victor felt tears sting his eyes. "What's it called?" he asked. Marcus paused. "I don't know. I just call it Her." Victor blinked. "Your grandmother?" Marcus nodded. "It sounds like how her hugs feel." Victor placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You've done something most of us never figure out, Marcus. You don't play the notes, you play the meaning." That spring, Marcus gave his first solo concert, this time as the headliner. Carnegie Hall again. The crowd was larger, louder, but when he walked on stage with his cane and sat at the piano, the world became still. No one breathed as he began. The boy who couldn't see lit up the room with music that made everyone else feel. After the final note, the crowd stood as one. 10 minutes of applause. Victor watched from the wings, his chest full, not of pride, of gratitude. He'd once thought Marcus had a gift, but he was wrong. Marcus was the gift, and in a world that often looks with its eyes but forgets to listen with its heart, a blind boy taught them all to see the end.